You're listening to Nightlight Radio Network. This is Dr. Bob Hieronymus, co-host of 21st Century Radio. We are happy to present this rebroadcast of our show on Nightlight. Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. I'm Dr. Bob Hieronymus, and our executive producer and research assistant is Laura Kortner, and our engineer is Anita Brockington. Tonight, we are talking about a subject we know mainly from science fiction movies, but it's entering the everyday very rapidly, so it's time to educate ourselves. We are talking about nanotechnology, those tiny little robots with artificial intelligence, with 1 billion different applications, and the plot of dozens of movies where they take over the world. Our guest tonight, Frank Boehm, will be our guide as we focused almost exclusively on the medical applications of nanotechnology. Frank Boehm's 769-page book is called Nanomedical Device and Systems Design, Challenges, Possibilities, Visions, and he's joining us for the next 2 hours to share his passion for the next huge leap in healthcare. It's no secret that Americans are suffering from a broken healthcare system, and it's getting worse. Costs continue to escalate, while the overall health of Americans continues to decline. The American lifestyle causes us to get fat and to live sicker and die quicker than folks in other industrialized countries around the world. Obesity alone accounts for 21% of all health care costs, and that's with the current incidence of obesity in the United States to be about 34% of adults. And by the year 2030, if trends continue, over half of Americans will be obese, as Pogo the Possum, the cartoon character created by Walt Kelly, and he was famous for saying, "We have met the enemy, and he is us." One ray of hope for a future less bleak than the one predicted by current trends is the advance in nanomedicine. Developments in nanotechnology have not only led to sharper and less invasive surgical tools, infinitely improved drug targeting to precise disease sites, and enhanced surgical tools, but they are coming at costs that should make them available to all. Star Trek-like concepts are entering the field of medicine at an accelerating pace, and here to report on some of the latest research developments is Frank Boehm. Frank Boehm has been involved with nanotechnology and especially nanomedicines since 1995. He serendipitously encountered the concept of nanotechnology on the internet and immediately became fascinated with its virtually limitless potential, particularly as it relates to the field of medicine. He passionately proceeded to autodidactically absorb knowledge on almost every aspect of nanotechnology and nanomedicine, and that means he taught himself and began to evolve advanced concepts and designs for near-term and long-term nanomedical components, devices, and systems. And in 2009, Frank founded and serves as CEO for the startup Nano Apps Medical, that's NA, which aims to investigate and develop advanced and cost-effective nanomedical devices and systems for the benefit of both the developing and developed worlds, and to facilitate human space travel in 2013. He generated his first book entitled Nanomedical Device and Systems Design, Challenges and Possibilities, Visions, CRC Press, and he is now in the process of generating 2 new books in parallel to articulate his larger vision of where nanotechnology, nanomedicine, and artificial intelligence may lead, entitled Nanotechnology, Nanomedicine, and Artificial Intelligence Toward the Dream of Global Healthcare, Equivalency and Molecular Manufacturing, Emergence of the Grand Equalizer. A third book entitled Nanomedical Brain-Cloud Interface, Explorations and Implications is also in the works, which will investigate the possibilities of hypothetical, for now, nanomedically enabled brain-cloud interface. Welcome to 21st Century Radio, Frank Beam.
Hello, Dr. Bob. Thank you very much, and pleased to meet you, and I appreciate you having me on your show.
Well, we certainly appreciated going through your 769 pages. That was quite some challenge. I saw words.
Thank you very much for the effort.
I saw words I've never seen before.
Well, don't worry. I had to look them up myself before I wrote them down. So you're fine.
It was some experience, I'll tell you. I really enjoyed it. So how did you get...
Before we go on, I'd like to, I just was reading that you started your radio, 21st Century Radio, back in 1988. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so happy belated 30th anniversary.
Oh, thank you.
On your fascinating programming, and you're doing a lot to stimulate the human intellect. I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's been one long struggle. I mean,
oh yeah,
if we've been there 30-some years, and in the 32nd year, actually, 33rd. And it has been an interesting experience to see how this location in Baltimore has been altered by this kind of technology or this information. Now, let's get to what is nanotechnology and nanomedicine, and how did you get involved in these areas?
Okay, well, let's start with nanotechnology. It is the capacity to controllably manipulate matter at the atomic and molecular levels. So this scale range we're talking about is typically at the range from 1 to 100 nanometers. That's where all the magic kind of, so to speak, happens. So to give you a sense of this scale, 1 micron is a millionth of a meter, 1 nanometer is a billionth of a meter, and you would be able to fit 100,000 nanometers in the width of a human hair, just to give you a kind of a graphic on that.
Whoa, that's quite a graphic you gave us there. How much did you say that? In
100,000 nanometers in the width of a human hair.
Whoa.
Typical human hair.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So our DNA is 2 nanometers in diameter, and you could probably fit 5 to 10 atoms in 1 nanometer. So depending on the size of the atom, hydrogen atoms are like 0.5 nanometers in diameter, so you'd be able to fit 10 of those in a row, and that would equal a nanometer. So we're talking very, 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 very small.
Very small, yeah. Now, what makes nanotechnology and nanomedicine so unique?
Well, okay, I'll just kind of go through how I came across this. As you said, I came across it on the Internet. I was just fascinated with all the possibilities, especially in how it might be applied to medicine. Then I started researching all the people that were involved in this, and I came across this book called Engines of Creation by Dr. Eric Drexler, who actually a lot of people call the godfather of nanotechnology, because he popularized it. Prior to him was Richard Feynman. He actually gave a talk in 1959 that kind of described making smaller machines with bigger machines down to the microscale. So that was the first kind of instance about somebody just articulating what nanotechnology is. So then I read another book by Eric Drexler called Nanosystems, Molecular Machinery, Manufacturing, Computation, which gets into all the technical aspects of how these machines might be made at the microscale. So then I started just getting very passionate about this. I started reading everything I possibly could on nanotechnology at the time, which was relatively scant compared to now. I can't even keep up with it now. But chemistry, biology, electronics, computation, physics, and just started learning everything I possibly could, because it's all kind of connected to nanotechnology. And then I had evolved concepts for advanced nanomedical devices and started connecting with some of the top heads on the planet in this field. So as far as nanomedicine goes, I connected with Dr. Robert Freitas Jr. He's like the father of nanomedicine. He wrote the first books on the planet concerning nanomedicine. So I connected with him, and in many senses, he was my mentor, because I asked him many, many questions. I probably drove him crazy asking all these questions. But I was just like a sponge. So he was kind of like my mentor. He gave me lots of insights. So that's how I got into it. So what makes nanotechnology and nanomedicine unique is it kind of imbues new properties to materials and enhances their properties in comparison to their bulk counterparts. So, for instance, you have increased electrical or thermal conductivity or resistance to the same, more sensitivity to light or wavelengths, so the improved conversion of light into electricity, like in solar panels, for instance. Also improved catalysts to initiate chemical reactions, or you can apply it to the environment for environmental remediation for degrading contaminants in the environment and toxins to benign elements. And you could also do things like capture CO2 and convert that into something that's useful, or even into building products, which would be pretty cool.
Mm-hmm, sure.
Which we need now, I think.
Really, the sooner the better. Geez whiz.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so concerned, and I'm sure you are too, about this type 2 diabetes.
Yes.
And the cost associated with treating these diseases continues to escalate year by year, plus the incidence continues to rise as well. I was looking at some stats. Consider that in 2016, cardiovascular disease cost the U.S. about $555 billion.
That's a lot of clams.
Yeah, but listen to the clams. It's going to cost us in 2035. They figure it's going to be $1.1 trillion. And that's really a scary trend in the United States, is in this an increasing incidence of type 2 diabetes, especially amongst children. That's why I said, boy, the sooner the better, because
absolutely.
We all see.
We need a lot of help on a lot of fronts, I think, right now.
Yeah, we sure do. We sure do. So, tell us about. I think we'll take our break now so that we won't be stopped in the middle of this. And when I come back, you can cheat and think about telling us about your first book and what the impetus was for writing it. Okay?
Sure.
All right. Okay. We'll be back with our guest, Frank Bean. Nanomedical Device and Systems Design Challenges, Possibilities, Visions, CRC Press. Available on Amazon.com or from the link on the front page of 21stCenturyRadio.com.
This is Carolyn Garcia, also known as Mountain Girl, and you're listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronymus.
Okay. You with us?
Oh, yes.
Okay. Let's see. The question I had for you was to tell us about your first book and what...
Oh, yeah. Just before we start that, I'd like to kind of go back to the previous question. I had a few more things to add there, if you wouldn't mind.
No, I wouldn't mind at all. The more, the better.
Okay, cool. So there's a thing called the Consumer Products Inventory of products that already have nanotechnology integrated into them. And believe it or not, there are more than 1,600 products on the market today that already incorporate nanotech. So the future is essentially already here. So this ranges from anything from nanotubes in car tires to make them last longer. There are also all kinds of nanomaterials in automotive plastics to actually make them stronger, more pliable, less staticky. And I think they're even infusing some of these plastics with aromas, so they actually give off a scent.
Wow.
Stuff like that. So that's a possibility. Other things that products that are making are called super hydrophobic products. So are you familiar with super hydrophobicity at all?
No, I'm not, but could you explain what that is?
Okay, sure. So if a surface is super hydrophobic, that means water just rolls right off it. It's like the lotus flower. So if you ever notice a lotus flower leaf, there's no water on it. It just rolls right off. And this is because the surface has like microscopic bumps on it, or microscale bumps on it. On top of those bumps are nanoscale bumps. So if you take an eyedropper and put a drop of water on there, it'll just roll up into a ball and just sit on top of the surface. It won't. It'll just roll off.
Wow.
And it'll actually take any dirt along with it. So what their researchers are doing is applying this to like glass. So the glass will be self-cleaning on buildings, for instance, or on automotive windshields. And it would also have the ability to keep frost off your windshield or anti-fog. So that's a whole new paradigm right there.
I'll say.
And also clothes. Say like they did this. There's a few companies out there that make super hydrophobic clothes. Like a sneaker, they poured chocolate syrup on the sneaker. It just rolled right off. So
I would need some of that when I'm eating my ice cream.
Oh, same here.
Sundays.
I'm a.
Are you an ice cream?
When I eat, stuff goes flying all over the place.
so do I.
Really help me.
I'm a two napkin man. I don't.
Right. Just two?
That's two. Yeah, that's all. I'd like to have three every now and then, but I don't know where to put the third one. Maybe on top of my head.
Depends if there's a beer involved or not, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So there's also a super hydrophilic, which is the opposite of. Going back to the super hydrophobic. So how they found this is there's a beetle in Namibia, in the desert there, that has its back has a surface like that. So it actually catches fog droplets on its back, and it kind of leans down, and it rolls down into its mouth. Is that crazy or what?
Yeah, I'll tell you.
So a lot of these things actually come from nature, and that's called biomimetics. So they take really kind of take a close look at how nature is doing things, just kind of emulate that in synthetically the way we think we can do it. So super hydrophilic is the opposite of super hydrophobicity, in that water will just spread out on the surface. So you put a drop of water, it will just flatten right out into a whole, a whole area. And some other effects are antibacterial surfaces. So they use something called colloidal silver that they coat a surface with, and it just kind of destroys bacteria on contact. And there are also there's this coating called microbial shield. So think, if you will, of a sword, but it's actually made out of atoms. Like there's a molecule that looks like a sword. And there's a nitrogen atom right at the sword where the handle meets the sword. And there are other atoms up at top that actually, because of the negative charge as opposed to a positive charge, it actually draws a bacteria onto the sword and just kind of explodes it when it hits the nitrogen atom. So there's all kinds of stuff like that going on that most people don't hear about.
No, I wish if these were in the hospitals today, what a difference it might make.
Yeah, I think it's actually starting to. Can you imagine? Bed sheets, everything could be, be infused with this stuff to get rid of, keep the bacteria down and viruses down. So you can also use nanotechnology to enhance the flavors of foods through colloidal suspensions, they call them, and it's just like little bags of, not polymers, but lipids, different things that they can, it's just all a matter of scale that can actually enhance the flavors of foods, bring them out, make them more tart or more sour or whatever. Other applications are filtering dirty water or even seawater using a nanomaterial called graphene.
That could save the world right there.
Oh yeah, there's
if
so
you
many
could clean up
That's
water.
What kind of blew my mind about this to begin with. It's just totally limitless. I mean, this would be my job description for the rest of my days for sure.
Well,
there's just too much to do.
We're having more and more serious problems with water. I don't know where we're going to get our cleaner water, and so this really could make a difference, and also could prevent wars. Having this technology in Egypt or Israel or wherever. So,
yes.
My gosh, this is such a blessing. Really,
Well,
it
yeah,
is,
we
Frank.
just need to all get on the same page because it can really honestly change the world. So that's why I think it's so exciting, and the more people that get on board and learn about it and actually start applying it, we can hopefully solve a lot of our issues.
Well,
Clean up our whole world and everything. That would be fantastic.
it really would, and especially for the children, because they're going to have it as much rougher than we had, and we're not ready for it. I mean, we see our weather changing, and we're not doing much about that, and we know what that means in the future to places like Louisiana and Houston and Florida and other places. They, with the kind of water and the filth that's going to come in, and does come in with that kind of water, is deadly. It's really deadly.
Oh, yeah.
Look at poor Puerto Rico still. Oh, boy.
Yeah, they're still working on getting their power back, I think, as well. Eh?
Yeah, yes, indeed. Even though the state of Maryland has been sending out 20 and 30 groups of individuals to Puerto Rico to help out. But, their electricity still crashes. Jeez. Well, I'm sorry to get into this, but that's why when I heard about what you were doing and then reading most of your book, I realized this is such a gem, such an important piece of work, and coming at a time when I know how dedicated you are to this. So I don't think anyone's going to be able to buy you off. And you know what I mean by that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
I've got the best interests of humanity on my brain.
That's correct. Sure. And that's what we need. Okay.
What we're trying to do is, I'll get into this later, but we're trying to get like a united front happening across the globe to actually start really affecting these changes and making good stuff happen.
Well, then let's talk about this book, this first book.
Yeah, sure.
And what the impetus was for writing it.
Yeah, so the impetus for writing it, like I started writing out all these concepts on nanomedicine and how I thought it would change things for the better, and connected with all these people all these researchers all over the world. And some of them mentioned to me, says, well, if you really want to be taken seriously, you should add references to everything you say. So it's always got a backup.
Yeah.
Otherwise, people will just think you're just kind of spouting out the top of your head, and, you can't. Can you actually prove that this is the case, for anything you write? And that made sense to me. So that kind of became the impetus for writing my book, and I thought it was important to get my ideas out there to perhaps inspire discussion and development of advanced nanomedical devices and systems to be of benefit for the world, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So the first chapter of my book is what I describe one of my nanomedical concepts. It's called the Vascular Cartographic Scanning Nanodevice, or VCSN. And I kind of use that as an exemplar for the whole book, just as an example, and of what an advanced autonomous nanomedical device would look like and what it would do. And so in subsequent chapters, I get into ingress and egress, like how these things would actually get into the human body, what it would do when it's in there, and how it would actually get out. So you can actually look at these devices as almost like a military mission. Like you're in for a mission, you can go in for half an hour, and then they would go out, either through natural processes, or they could go through your circulation to your nail beds, like your fingernail beds or toenail beds, and just grow out that way. They just power down and go out that way, or through your hair. There's many different ways of going in and out of the body, so I explore this. I also look at energy harvesting and generation, how these things would be propelled through the body, like flagella is like a little tail that whips through. That's how, sperm work. That's how different bacteria work. And there's a certain way, like at that scale, you're talking about if you and I were microscale, like blood would be like molasses, like trying to swim through molasses. So there's like the scallop theorem. You can't have anything that's reciprocal, like waving back and forth, or you just won't get anywhere. So it has to be kind of like a corkscrew or a propeller or some kind of thing. And nature has done this exquisitely already. that's the other thing about nanotechnology is that it's already happening in our bodies right now.
In what way?
Through different molecules and stuff like that.
Oh, I see.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask you, in what way is it operating in our bodies right now?
Okay, well, just in our cells, there are things called ribosomes. They are crazy little two-part machines. They actually come together and they transcribe our DNA, and they start making proteins. They start folding proteins just automatically. The proteins fold up automatically just by virtue of their positive and negative charges and on the elements of these amino acids that they're comprised of. So you have that going on. There's another nanomachine called the kinesin. Kinesin is like it's a two-legged little creature. It actually walks on these things called microtubule filaments that actually give structural integrity to our cells. So they walk back and forth of these things, carrying cargo back and forth like all day long, like millions of them in each one of our cells. Like we have no idea what's going on in our own body.
Yeah,
like
that's
that is
true.
nanotechnology at work already.
It sounds like a bunch of ants working all the time.
Yeah, but way smaller than ants.
Yes, way smaller. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just in the first few chapters of my book, I explore all these things, including computation and communications, like how these nano robotics will actually communicate with the outside world. They'd still be under total computer control by the surgeons and physicians that are working what I call out body, like they'd be out of the body. So the middle part of the book is comprised of 7 chapters that are contributed by researchers who are actually working in the laboratory on nanomedical devices. So I thought that'd be a good thing to do after I'm, talking about all this conceptual stuff, to have people that are actually doing this and getting the first, the first iterations of these things actually happening.
I found that very helpful.
Oh, absolutely.
Fleshing
it kind of brings it down to earth.
That's right. That's right. When you can actually kind of feel the people from that standpoint. Yes. I've seen bibliographies before, but yours is just incredible. After every chapter, you've got pages and pages of references. Certainly will satisfy anyone who has any questions about this. This is an all-in-one.
Yeah, that was the idea.
I didn't know this. I didn't know this when I first started. When we first started talking about this, but this is quite an education, and it can be fun. It really can, even though some words I can't possibly pronounce. And
well, it just takes practice.
Well, maybe so. Maybe so.
Yeah, that first word was autodidactically.
Oh,
I've said
yes.
it 1,000 times. That's why I know. That just means you taught yourself. Like I have my high school education. People think I'm a PhD, but no, I'm a proud high school graduate. But I was just totally passionate about this. And once you're passionate about something, there are no bounds. You can just it's like I say, I was on a mission, and you just keep on going until it gets done.
And that's one of the reasons. But that's one of the reasons why we're going to be awarding you a PhD from What's the Matter You? What's the Matter You?
Love it.
As our friends at
I will hang it
Bullwinkle.
on my wall.
We did a lot of special shows on Bullwinkle and Rocky and Bullwinkle, and
I used to watch that all the time in black and white.
Do you remember Pogo? Do you remember Pogo?
Oh yes.
Yeah, and Pogo and I just love those. They're my heroes. They really are. And because I don't think, especially today, you will ever have another cartoon like Rocky and Bullwinkle, because the corporate powers would not allow it. Because they really got right to the point as to what.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and
even the Three Stooges. Look at the Three Stooges. Like that probably wouldn't be allowed today, and they were pretty wild on each other. Yeah. Well,
we're pretty wild right now. We got to take a break here on 21st Century Radio with our guest Frank Boehm. Nanomedical device and the systems design, challenges, possibilities, visions, and it's published by the CRC Press, available on Amazon.com.
Hi, this is Janie Hendricks, sister of Jimi Hendrix, and you're listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronymus.
Welcome back to 21st Century Radio. I'm Dr. Bob Hieronymus. Our guest is Frank Boehm. And Frank, I had just learned the most exciting thing. You were a singer.
Oh, yes. I was in playing rock and roll full-time for 13 years on the road.
Wow. So was I, but I could never play an instrument. Did you play any instrument?
We must have missed each other.
Yes.
Where were you?
Well, I don't know. I was just hanging out. I was hanging out with Hendrix in those days.
Oh, wow. One of my heroes, man.
Well, by the way, we are sending you a new album. This album came out by Frank. Jimi Hendrix album called "People, Hell, and Angels." So we'll put that in your box. I'm so impressed. You're a musician. It's so much. I love musicians. I really do.
Oh.
No, really. Because you know what happens when you're in a group. You know what happens in your group. It's such a loving thing when everyone really works together. And
that's right.
It raises your consciousness, increases your positive health, and you're just it's a different world altogether than what most.
And you have a lot of fun.
Oh God, you have tremendous amounts of fun.
Maybe too much fun.
Well, I guess if you make it big,
it's known to happen.
When you get too big, you don't have as much fun. You
got to keep a lid on it for sure.
That's for sure. Well, I guess we got more important things to talk about right now. And what will some of the most important and far-reaching applications of nanotechnology and nanomedicine be?
Okay, well, I'll get to that in a second. There's just two other points I had about the book.
Oh, okay.
Just to kind of let people know what's involved. Like, it took me 8 years to write the book.
My heavens, yeah.
So I was working, like, I'm not bragging or anything, that's just what it took.
Yeah.
So I was writing at night after work and then on weekends. So I basically had no life for 8 years. And when you commit yourself to something like that, you really got to take a close look and say, okay, am I really going to do this, right? Mm-hmm. So after year 6, I'm kind of going, like, there were times where I thought, man, I don't know if I'll be able to do this. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without the support and love from my family and friends, for sure. They just, kept me going when I was in those little troughs. I didn't think I was going to do it. And but just as I say, if you're passionate about something, you just keep at it and do not give up. That's mm-hmm. my advice to people that are looking to write their first book or, to do anything. Do not give up on your passions and your dreams. Anyway, so just the cover of the book, you notice is kind of amazing. That was done by Dr. Angelika Domsch. She's in Atlanta, Georgia.
It's beautiful.
She's an excellent artist, research scientist, and consultant, and she also contributed a chapter to the book. She used to work for Novartis as a research scientist, and she worked on advanced holographic contact lenses that would actually detect glucose. So this would help with your type 2 diabetes thing you were just talking about. You can actually sense them with contact lenses. That's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. And the cover image is just about some of the nanomedical devices that I designed, and it's kind of psychologically supposed to give you the impression that the applications are limitless. So that's just so I can explain that.
Yeah, I see.
Okay, so what are the most important far-reaching applications? Okay, so I think nanotechnology has the capacity to touch virtually every business sector, any medical sector. There's been lots of hype with nanotechnology over the last decade or so, and people are wondering, kind of scratching their heads, like, what happened? And I think what the problem is, or the issue is, why it's taking longer is people were expecting nanotech industries to pop up, but it's actually a fundamentally paradigm-shifting technology that's going to underlie all industries. So I think that's why it's taking longer. But we can see it seeping into all sorts of, as I mentioned, there's over 1,600 products already, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to be imbued in virtually everything down the road, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So in the energy sector, it's going to change things in that we'll have like a massively distributed energy. So like you won't need a energy grid anymore. I'd say like the time frame for all this is typically about 10 to 30 years. Because like the technologies they're still in their first early iterations, but they're getting more sophisticated. For instance, solar panels are becoming ever more efficient, and I'm not sure if they're at parity with fossil fuels now, but they're getting pretty close, and soon they'll surpass it. So you'll be able to essentially print your own solar panels in your own home. And use those, also sophisticated batteries and all kinds of stuff. I'll get into that a bit later. But so it also has capacity to completely clean and then reinvigorate the environment, get rid of all the plastics in the oceans. I'm sure you're familiar with the
what problem?
Pacific Gyre, they call it. It's like bigger than Texas, or even bigger than that now.
Yeah.
I believe. But that has to be taken care of, all those microplastics. If we could find, actually somebody just found some kind of a enzyme that loves eating that plastic.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. That's set them up.
That would be cool.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, so, you just put all these little enzymes out there that start eating this stuff. That would be excellent. And, of course, the CO2, if we can help to suck the CO2 out of the environment, out of the air, and convert it into building materials, as I said, or just convert it into some other product that can be used, kind of benignly. There's also a thing called molecular manufacturing. Now, this is it was first brought to light by Richard Feynman again in 1959. As he was talking about making smaller things with bigger machines. Mm-hmm. And it was also brought to light by Eric Drexler in his book Engines of Creation. He talked about a molecular assembler that would actually put things together atom by atom. And he even talked about making a jet engine in a vat of liquid with these molecular assemblers with all the ingredients necessary, and they're just programmed. They have little quantum computers in them, and like this is conceptual for now, and it would build like a pristine rocket engine right in that vat.
Wow!
So that's what got my head going on this. That was in his first book, so I was going, wow, that's something else, man.
It sure is.
But I'll get into the molecular manufacturing a bit later, but that's I think is going to be world changing for sure. So. Okay, so one of the most important things, one of the things that could be happening with nanomedicine is two concepts I come up with. As I say, the vascular cartographic scanning nanodevice, so I'll explain that now. So what it would be is a 1 micron in diameter nanomedical device. It would have its own brain, like a quantum computer, be totally programmed from a physician or surgeons after they actually map the whole body. And, probably 10,000 or more of these would be introduced into the human body, like through a patch or through a topical gel, or you could swallow it as a pill. There's many ways of getting them in there. They would automatically start scanning your whole vasculature from top to bottom, like down to capillary level. And they'd map the whole thing, and they'd be done in maybe half an hour. Oh. And then they'd get out of the body. And that information would be translated to, say, a supercomputer, and you'd be able to image your whole vascular system in 3D, or you'd be able to have the capacity to fly through this whole system to see where there are plaque deposits, or if there's an imminent aneurysm about to happen in your brain and stuff like that. Or you could have a holographic rendering. You could just have it right in front of you spinning around, right?
Right.
So that's the idea of that. The precursor to this is what I call the gastrointestinal micro-scanning device. So this would be like a pill-sized thing that you would swallow, and you'd have like a little patch on the side of your belly, And for the next few days, this thing would just go through your body and just inertly just go along with the peristaltic motion of your gastrointestinal system, and would map the whole thing. And all the data would be transmitted to that little patch. So that little patch, and when it's done, after 2 days, and you just go about your normal business, you take the patch off, you plug it into a computer like a USB stick, and you'd have your whole GIT kind of rendered there, same kind of thing. But that's an earlier stage, which would be much simpler to get going.
Hey, how would it be effective with ileitis, colitis?
It would help. Well, this would just be a diagnostic tool. Like, there are other things that could actually treat things, but this would just be mapping it.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's distinguish that. There are other things you could use to actually repair all sorts of ailments. So another application, a big application that I cover in my book too, is massive augmentation of your immune system through a device called the Sentinel. The Sentinel would act as it would basically attack and destroy any non-self entity that enters your body. So it would have a whole database in its little computer brain, and anything that it doesn't recognize, even if it's unknown, it'll just destroy it, like a toxin or some kind of bug or whatever. But it knows not to touch anything healthy that's supposed to be there. So that could help us with a lot of things, like never getting the flu, never getting any kind of sickness, and actually help us live longer and things like that. So that's another thing, and then that moves on to longevity itself. So longevity, there's this substance. One of the things that have been looked at. This is started by Aubrey de Grey. He's in the UK, and I've been in touch with him once in a while, and we've been discussing this.
We're going to need to pause now, and we'll return.
Oh yeah, no problem.
We'll return.
I just go on and on.
Well, I want you to go on and on because this is such important stuff. This is 21st Century Radio, and we'll be back in just a few minutes with our guest, Frank Boehm. And our guest is Frank Boehm. Nanomedical device and systems design, challenges, possibilities, visions, CRC Press. Available on Amazon.com or from the link on the front page of 21stcenturyradio.com. Learn more about Frank and nanotechnology for medical applications at his website, www.nanoappsmedical.com. All right, so while we were partying away here,
as we always do.
Yes, we do. Have a good
In our
time.
spare time.
Hey, did you play a guitar?
Yeah, I play guitar and bass, and we kind of switch back and forth. And I wrote lots of songs. I'm still writing songs, and actually, after all these books are done, I'm planning to put out my first CD ever.
Oh, well, then you're going to have to join us to play it on the radio here. On
right on
21st Century Radio.
Well, I'd like to get in your van there and just travel around a bit.
Well, if we got it and you're around, cool. We'll do something about that. By the way, since we are giving you also several guitar picks from Jimi Hendrix guitar picks.
Really?
Yes.
That would be awesome.
Now these aren't ones he played with, but these are ones he designed. They were exactly the same, and that's why Janie gave them to us and said, "Look,
that is cool.
If you
Very
bump
cool.
into people that like my brother, or really love my brother." And so
that's why. As I learned his one of his albums, note for note, "Cry of Love" album.
Well, that's
a challenge, but I stuck at it. But wow, what a player!
Well, and what a person too.
Oh yeah, he gave a lot of good stuff to the world.
The media never understood this man, as a matter of fact, and that was one of the biggest problems because the media was more or less looking at his hair and his clothes and this and that and these and those, and didn't pay attention to what he was saying, nor his kindness.
He was giving love out, man, everywhere.
Yes, he was. He was fine. Okay. Oh, well, we've got to stop this now. I'm sorry about that. But
That's all right.
Okay, were we finishing up? Yes, we were finishing.
Oh, yeah. So I was mentioning Aubrey de Grey. So he's in the UK, and we were talking about longevity. Like he's been espousing longevity for quite some time now, and he started the SENS Foundation. He was quoted one time saying that if we just took out the garbage in our cells, like kept them clean, we could live up to 1,000 years.
Wow.
So that kind of blew my mind. I went, okay, how would that possibly happen?
Yeah.
And so anyway, one of the things we were looking at, I was looking at it from the nanomedical perspective. He was looking at it from the biochemistry perspective. But there's this substance called lipofuscin. It's like a waxy, heterogeneous, which means it's got a lot of different components into it. It's like a waxy substance, and it builds up. It's like a metabolic end product of your lysosomes. So lysosomes are these things in your cells, or one of the organelles in your cells. They're like the garbage disposal units. So it takes apart different elements that the cell no longer needs, and it puts it in there, and it has about a complement of about 50 different enzymes, and it can break it all down into, very inert elements. So Aubrey was thinking of a way to get rid of this lipofuscin, and by doing so, could you rejuvenate the question was, could you rejuvenate the cells, and then by virtue of that, could you rejuvenate the organs, and then hence the person themselves? So he couldn't find any way of getting rid of this stuff, and he kind of had a moment, and he decided to go to a graveyard. So he went to an old graveyard where the plague victims were buried.
My.
And took some samples, or had his people take samples. I'm sure he was there too. But they found no lipofuscin at all in the ground. So he kind of postulated that there must be some kind of bacteria in the soil that was spewing out enzymes that could actually break down this lipofuscin.
Whoa.
So what we were talking about is if we could find some kind of soil bacteria and put it into nanomedical devices and target them to these lysosomes, to the cells, you could potentially get rid of this lipofuscin and rejuvenate the cells and rejuvenate the patient. So that's one area in longevity. That's just one of many that they're looking at that could actually increase our lifespan quite dramatically.
Wow.
So that's just putting out the garbage.
Yeah.
Another thing is from Dr. Robert Freitas Jr. He came up with this concept for total chromosome replacement. So that means they would actually map your chromosomes and replicate it out in the lab. And then they would use nanodevices to put them in your cells and totally get rid of the whole complement of the chromosomes in your nucleus, replace the whole complement, and rejuvenate the cells that way.
Wow.
I know it sounds kind of extreme, but in the age of nanomedicine and nanotechnology, like when it's mature, that'll be kind of a regular occurrence.
Sounds like a brave new world.
Yeah, it'll be different for sure. So those are some of the more long-term possibilities. There's also the aspect that this is why I'm writing all these books now, because I kind of look at them as a preemptive heads up to what's going on downstream, and we should actually start thinking about this seriously and devising strategies and regulations and stuff like that, just so we can kind of keep some modicum of control on this stuff. Because with any powerful technology, as you know, there are possibilities to go either way with it. What we want to do is accentuate and maximize the positives and minimize the negatives, of course.
Of course.
So there's the aspect of us melding with our technologies, which is what we're already doing. Like, just look at everybody walking around with their cell phones. It's like an extension of their brain now.
Yeah.
Myself included. But, and it's going to get to the point where it's actually going to start. Well, people have already started making themselves cyborgs. They have those implants all over the place. And beyond the medical, though, some people are just doing it for human augmentation reasons. Like I remember, I forget what his name was. He actually had some kind of a little light or something coming out of the back of his head. I'm not sure who that was, but something like that. But humans are an adventurous species for sure. So then we get into the transhumanist movement, which is happening all over the place now as well. And they think we should totally integrate ourselves with technologies just so we don't get overrun by like AI. And Elon Musk is the same. That's what he's kind of proposing. So we can't really, if we just keep ourselves the way we are, AI is just going to be kind of supersede us and we'll be lost in the dust. So he kind of, and others say that we should kind of meld with them. So those are some of the far-reaching applications of nanomedicine that just off the top of my head.
Well, could you tell us about your startup company, Nano Apps Medical, and why you formed it and what the aims of the company are?
Sure. Nano Apps was formed. I formed it in 2009 to begin developing advanced nanomedical devices, diagnostic and therapeutic devices, to help both the developing and developed worlds. We did a bit of preliminary work in 2009, 2010 with magnetic nanoparticles with a small grant. But then it kind of lay dormant for a number of years while I was writing my book and, working. So as I said, I had a period of 8 years there where that's all I was doing. So trying to get the funding for the company was not on the charts at that time. So what happened, let me see, in 2016, I drove across the country from Thunder Bay to Vancouver, which is where I am now. And I connected with a woman called Amanda Scott. She works for Alias Studio in Sydney, Australia. So we started collaborating, and we kind of, together we brought Nano Apps back to life through our Nano Apps medical site. And Amanda did an amazing job in creating the site and continues to improve and maintain it with daily news, Twitter, Tumblr, and so on. So we got to the point now, it's about 2 years now we've had it going. We're one of the top 50 nanotech blogs on the net, which is pretty cool, I thought.
Yeah, I'll say.
So she is now director of communications and marketing for Nano Apps Medical. And we have another partners on the team as well that are at various academic and medical facilities who have a wide range of expertise in nanotechnology, nanomedicine, clinical medicine, electronics, photonics, electrochemistry, and nanomaterials. So we have a really good team. I've kind of assembled that over the last 5 years or so. So we have multiple projects that we're looking to secure funding for right now, but it's been a challenge because it seems to be kind of like a really very risk-averse funding environment, particularly as relates to these new technologies, because maybe they don't kind of understand what the implications are and the massive potential for these things. But that's what I found. Just it's been a struggle trying to get this stuff funded. So it's like a catch-22 because some funders want a prototype, IP, patents in place before they will fund anything. But you need money to actually make the prototype. Like it may take, a fair amount of money just to get to the prototype stage because it takes work, and you got to verify that things work and things like that.
Sure. What kind of ballpark figure would you need to do these kind of things economically?
Well, we're looking at some sensors now that would be able to detect various diseases using things other than blood. Just a very basic thing would be about $500K, but some of the more elaborate things that would have even more applications would probably start from 1 to 3 million, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But research is not cheap. I mean, if you're dealing with these facilities and laboratories, everybody wants to get paid and have salaries and have some stability in what they're doing.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're looking to do now is align with individuals and entities who are willing to take the risks involved with development of these things. They're potentially very powerful technologies, and they have strong potential, I think, to change many paradigms toward positively shaping our future as humanity. That's what I think, and I think that's worth investing in.
I think so too, and the more the public knows about this, and the media knows about this, the better, because they're going to be thrilled. This is so thrilling. I mean, Frank, I am so proud of you.
Oh, hey, I'm proud of you too.
I know, but look, I know what it's taken me. It took me, and my producer knows this, 30 years to do the book on the Yellow Submarine.
Wow.
30 years of...
That is a long time.
It is a hell of a long time. And
that's tenacity, that's for sure.
And also some of the murals that I've done, which have taken years to do. But I know what it takes to stick through something, even though you may not even have the money to stick through it. Because artists are always in this terrible situation. We'll do the work, but you got to eat at the same time.
That's right.
And you got to pay for this and that and these and those. And so it takes very special people that can care enough to forego the kind of things that most people absolutely need, and that's why I'm proud of you. And I'm
well, thanks very
much.
I think Dr. Bob, I think everybody actually is capable of doing things like writing a book or whatever. They just have to find their passion first of all.
Yeah.
And find out what you don't want to do first of all, and then kind of find your dream and just get at it and stick at it. And as I said, don't ever give up.
Well, we're finding right now that we have to take a break here on 21st Century Radio with our guest Frank Boehm, Nanomedical Device.
This is Dr. Richard Bartlett, founder of Matrix Energetics, and you're listening to 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronymus.
Well, we're aiming to, we're starting with the early, applications of nanomedicine, which will be the easiest, like the lowest hanging fruit, I think, will be the diagnostic end, because you're not, not putting anything in the body, which will take much longer to, get FDA clearance and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But just to get the ball rolling, we'd like to get into these diagnostics, get these things going. So we're still working to try and get funding here in North America, but in addition to that, we're setting up a NanoApps Medical affiliated entity in Europe in association with a person we have there on the ground. And what's happening right now, the EU is very aggressively funding innovation and future technologies. So we would certainly like to be a part of that and could contribute to this effort. So we're kind of expanding out. NanoApps is kind of like the main company, but there's going to be a lot of strategic partners working on various aspects like AI and space and things like that. So we're kind of getting things set up where we can touch a lot of areas in a positive way.
Well, and it seems like Europe is moving much more rapidly ahead than we are in this particular country, especially dealing with healthcare.
They're moving it over there for sure.
Yeah, they really are, and we're just falling so far behind.
If I may, what needs to happen is we're on this little blue planet. We need all to work together. If we're going to hope to have a better future for our children, our grandchildren, like we're getting to a crisis point now, so we can't fool around.
Nope, you're right.
That's my opinion.
Yeah. Now, you are currently working on 3 new books. Would you describe them and tell us why you are writing the first 2 in parallel? That's a hard thing to do.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've got lots of help this time. So my first book, I wrote probably 10 chapters on my own. With these next 3 books, I'll probably have more than 20 or 30 contributing authors. So thank God.
Oh, that's a big help, all right.
But also, these books actually lend themselves to this because I want a lot of diverse opinions from all sorts of people. So that's going to be a good fit, I think.
Yeah.
So anyway, the first book is called Nanotechnology, Nanomedicine, and AI Toward the Dream of Global Healthcare Equivalency. This is kind of like my larger vision of where I see this all going, like nanomedicine, nanotechnology, and artificial intelligence. I think one of the applications is going to coalesce, and the synergies between them may give rise to what I call global healthcare equivalency in the next 10 to 30 years. So the premise of this is no matter how wealthy or impoverished you are, no matter where you happen to reside on the planet or under what conditions you live, you have the same high-quality nanomedical healthcare, like a universal worldwide healthcare system. So progress toward this goal will be incremental, but each successive wave of nanomedical technologies will be more advanced than the previous wave. But it's going to the tipping point will be where molecular manufacturing comes onto the stage. So molecular manufacturing is actually the ability to build things at the with atomic precision. So we look at today's 3D printers. Those are like the early stages of this, and I think molecular manufacturing will be the progeny. So imagine like a microwave type device in your house. I call them the factory at home system. And you'd be able to print your running shoes, your toothbrush, your food, gourmet meals, plus your sophisticated nanomedical devices that are prescribed by your physician in your own home.
I'm watching my producer shake her head right now. He just doesn't get it.
Bottom line is everything's made of atoms, right? Including us.
Right.
We are aggregates of atoms. We're just put together in a certain way that we actually work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's the same with a potato or anything else. It just matters how these atoms are arranged and how they function with each other that gives functionality to whatever it is they're made of. Like, you have a rock and you have a plant and you have just increasing complexity of the atomic structure gives rise to different things until we reach things like DNA, which gives us and all sorts of animals and all the biodiversity on the planet. Anyways, so if this global healthcare equivalency comes online, it has potential to significantly reduce the perception of individuals in the developing world of being marginalized, at least in terms of their health care. This may ultimately translate to conflict reduction, I think, because they won't feel so, out of it. They'll be actually included in having top-tier health care as well. And there's nothing better than a healthy population to, get the countries rolling, because there'll be a lot less losses in missed days and lost productivity due to sickness and health. So in the developed world, I think global healthcare equivalency will have the effect of dramatically reducing healthcare expenditures across the board. So because molecular manufacturing can make these things so cheaply, that's why I think it would be able to be expanded globally.
Well, that's one of the great things about this system, in the sense that you're really looking out for those who really have no health care at all around the world.
That's right.
And right. You haven't touched on it yet, but I'm sure you will later, if we got time, as to the importance of how you have been able to cut the costs of various high technology, and to make it possible for the poor really to receive the health care. Because the great thing about this is, your support of diversity, which is what the world it is. That kind of diversity of bringing people together will create, in my opinion, what basically would be referred to as caring and love for each other. When the rest of the poorer world realizes that America, with the heart that it has had in the past, not today, but in the past, always helping others, always going out there and looking out for the underdog. That's one of the things, if you don't mind my saying, this is very Christly. And I don't mean that just in a religious sense. It's the kind of thing that I believe what holy men have been talking about forever. And that is looking out for everyone instead of the wealthy, instead of just the billionaires. Because the billionaires can afford any kind of health care they want. No wonder.
So things will obviously change because a lot of the healthcare systems are in disarray, or they're just totally dysfunctional, or they don't exist at all on the planet right now. So another aspect of this is, in contrast to our natural, inalienable human rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, our equally important right to good health, and by extension of this, good health care, which is critical for all of us, is dysfunctional. So we got to get that back on track, I think. And we are struggling with these healthcare systems worldwide. And as you know, there are massive expenditures for drugs. Like some of these pills cost $1,000 a piece, or families are struggling for $100,000 a year in drug expenses. That's like, I don't think that's sustainable.
No, it isn't sustainable, but we see it almost every day.
Yes.
It's.
So what I propose is like an inclusive program. We need to work together, I think. So I just have a quote here from the World Bank and the World Health Organization. They say that half the world lacks access to essential health services. 100 million people are still pushed into extreme poverty because of health expenses. And the WHO Director General, Dr. Chan, she mentions in one of her quotes, in a world facing considerable uncertainty, international health development is a unifying and uplifting force for the good of humanity. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an apt description of what the essence of what global healthcare equivalency could be.
Yes, I agree with you. One of these days we're going to say something I don't agree with. When's that going to be? I know when it will be. Which of Jimi Hendrix's songs was the best? I know. That's the big fight we're going to get into. People fight.
Yeah, I wanted that guitar pick.
Now, why? You're writing 3 books. Why write these books now?
So I'm writing the 2 together. The one on molecular manufacturing, that's going to change like everything, I think. It's going to change the way we manufacture things, as I just mentioned. It'll be massively distributed. Now, keep in mind, this is 10 to 30 years down the road. So the reason I'm writing it now, because as we know, technologies are advancing so quickly. And especially with the advent of artificial intelligence, it'll be changing exponentially, as Ray Kurzweil predicts. Just because we have all these, supercomputers and everything, we'll be able to very quickly figure out different pathways or the wrong pathways that we should go in any general area. So that's what I think is going to happen there. But so global healthcare equivalency. So I'm writing these books as a preemptive heads up to kind of hopefully get people to start thinking about these things and discussing them, because I think they're going to be coming downstream pretty quickly. So we can actually regulate them and kind of assess what the positives and negatives are and kind of maximize the good for humanity, really, for this.
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of work from me, but there's no
of course.
doubt about it. I mean, such a huge, massive undertaking will take sustained, high-spirited collaboration from people with widely varied backgrounds, diverse areas of expertise, and, highly specialized laboratories, administrative institutions, regulatory bodies, government agencies all have to work together to kind of make this happen. So what I'm hoping is to kind of get a united front happening on this, and almost like a movement with like-minded individuals who see that this might be a good idea to have global health care.
I'll say.
As it actually benefits each of us.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we each have our own unique talents, I think, and expertise that we could devote to this. I think it's a really noble enterprise, and I think it could really help us, and it could. What I mentioned it as an inalienable right of optimal health for life.
It should be.
That's kind of like the prerequisite for all the other rights that we have.
Yeah.
So if you're not healthy, you can't fully, fulfill your life with all these other aspects.
No, you can't. Well, one aspect that keeps coming up is commercials, and we got they're coming right about now, and our time is running out. We got about 20-some minutes, so we got to now move into them right now, and we'll be seeing you, Frank, in just a few minutes.
Hello, this is Dr. John Brandenburg, nuclear physicist and author of Life and Death on Mars on 21st Century Radio with Dr. Bob Hieronymus. 21st Century Radio, your source for the hidden truths of reality.
Okay, Frank.
Hello.
Yes, Frank. Are you sitting up straight and paying attention? It's a good thing.
Oh, yes, of course, always.
But you're not chewing gum, are you?
No time.
No time to chew gum. Okay, now, what might the moral, ethical, and social aspects be of GHCE, and that would be global healthcare equivalency, and MM, that's not Marilyn Monroe, but molecular manufacturing, and B/CI, which is brain-cloud interface?
Oh, yeah. I should just touch on that for a moment, if you don't mind.
Please do.
Yeah, so the third book is going to be called Nanomedical Brain-Cloud Interface, Explorations and Implications. So this is an in-depth exploration of, I'm actually working on 2 papers right now with 10 different co-authors that explore this. So this is going to be an expansion of these papers that explores a hypothetical possibility that the cerebral cortex of the human brain could be seamlessly, safely, and securely connected with the cloud as a brain-cloud interface. So this would be, as opposed to brain implants, whatever, these would be small, micron-scaled nanomedical devices that you wouldn't even perceive as being in your body, like a red blood cell, or is 8 microns in diameter. Some cells are even up to 30 microns in diameter, and we don't know that they're even there. So this would be totally imperceptible, but they will actually act as an antenna for your brain if you want to. This is totally voluntary, of course, to the cloud. And this is also, I'm just kind of moving on from Ray Kurzweil, who actually initially discussed this possibility that nanobots would connect our brains to the cloud to kind of give us the access to the full human knowledge. And I kind of get into some different other concepts, applications of this as well. But so one of the things I just want to cover is a thing called transparent shadowing.
Oh, yes, please do.
So this would be on a permission-based or fee-based seminar, if you will. Okay, I'll use the example of a carpenter. Say a carpenter wants to show us how to make a dovetail joint. We don't know anything about it. So if we all have these brain cloud interface units, we could actually, with his permission or her permission, would actually inhabit their bodies. But they would not know we were there. We would have no access to their emotions or self-speak or anything like that. But you would feel everything that they are feeling. You'd smell the smell of the sawdust. You'd smell the glue, and you'd feel the wood, the texture of the wood, and all that stuff. So that's what we call transparent shadowing, and that could have many applications, and it actually might make us put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. So you'd actually have their experience.
Wow,
so that could be beneficial, I think, in a lot of respects.
I'll say.
This is what it's like to be a street person. This is what it's like to, being in battle somewhere. This is what it's like to be a pilot. There's all kinds of applications. So that's one of the things we're covering in that. But we're also looking at all the moral, sociological, ethical, philosophical implications, because just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do it. So this is another reason why I'm getting these books out here, so everybody can start discussing these things and whether we should do it, and if so, how can we maximize the positives again, and how can we make them secure that they're not hacked by nefarious sources, for mind control and all that stuff. We don't want that.
Right, of course not.
So that's discovered that. And each of these technologies will likely be underpinned, as you've heard of blockchain probably. That's a really hot topic right now. It's along with cryptocurrencies. But I think each of these technologies will be underpinned and driven by blockchain technologies, because they can verify and record every transaction and keep it all organized, and could actually negate the hacking and corruptions of the systems. And plus also these systems will be generating massive amounts of data. So it will actually accommodate or facilitate their seamless operation. Okay, that's all I have to say about that one.
Well, one of the thrilling, there's several thrilling areas in your book, but the one book area that I found thrilling was when you started talking about nanomedicine in space applications. Wow.
Right on.
What a difference. Wow. Talk to us about that, please.
Sure. So one of the concepts that came up for this is what I call the interskin. The interskin would be like a bodysuit that would be a liner of a spacesuit, and it would be interfaced with your skin. It would actually monitor you 24/7 or whenever you had it on, and would be able to actually, if you were in trouble, would be able to administer therapeutics. Your helmet would also have you get your brain scanned in there, and it's just essentially on board. You're wearing your whole medical facility on your body, and it would continually monitor you. And the beauty of this is, for space travel, is it's compact. It would be sophisticated, lightweight, which would be a perfect alignment with space travel, because that's what's needed. Mm-hmm. And so you could also have medical sick bays on spacecraft for this, and medical bays on lunar and Mars habitats. So that's another prong we're hoping to get funding for, is to start getting nanomedicine happening in space applications, because it has capacities for, like nanotechnology, nanomaterials have capacities for reducing radiation, like cosmic rays coming in and messing up with the body and the DNA. There are also, I cover in my book, there are enhanced nanomedical DNA protection and repair mechanisms that can be brought about by nanomedical devices, and if necessary, chromosome replacement, like we were discussing earlier. And it could possibly positively affect the physiological effects of microgravity, which there's about 40 different things that go wrong with the body because of microgravity.
Yeah, that was the section. That was the section that I was really shocked about. I did not realize what happens to the bones.
Oh yeah, I was shocked too.
Oh well, geez, no wonder we didn't put our men back on the ship and send them back to the moon or attempt to Mars, because I'll let you take on that, because I don't want to.
I had the honor of meeting Chris Hadfield a couple of years ago. He was the commander of the space station for a while, and he's been up on a couple mini shuttle crafts, and he was actually I think the only North American that knew how to fly a Soyuz spacecraft. But I had really, I shook his hand and said, man, mm-hmm. How do you do that?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Just blew my mind. And he's, I guess, fluent in Russian as well, so he had to learn Russian over 20 years or something. It's amazing to me what humans can do when they really are passionate about something, that's for sure.
Brave new world.
Oh, yeah.
And in a really positive way, too, because by bringing healthcare to the world will make...
Yes.
Well, I imagine it will eliminate wars. People will not fall for the the story that they must kill and to survive.
Exactly.
And that really is a great blessing, because war, we're incessantly at war in America, and that's where so much of our money goes.
Yes.
And it should be going into more peaceful things, but we aren't doing that, and it looks like there's some people even searching for wars right now. To build their own confidence in themselves. So that's one of the reasons why I think this is such an important work, because it gets to the point where back in 1968 we had a phrase for it, and it was basically, we are one people on one planet.
Absolutely. On a very, very small planet.
On a very small planet.
Plus the odds of us not being here at all are immense. So it's just a miracle to me that we're here to begin with. And while we're here for such a finite time, why don't we make the best of it?
For sure. Now, there is this, each of these technologies sound quite disruptive, though, in a certain sense, and paradigm shifting. What of job displacement, changing infrastructures, etc.?
I mean, as far as nanomedicine goes, like, things that'll change are, like, there'll probably be no longer a need for huge hospitals. It'll probably be down to a clinic situation, because nobody will actually be staying in hospitals anymore, unless it's, like, you probably have trauma centers still for, massive accidents or something like that. But as far as taking care of cancer and all that stuff, you could make your cancer eradicating nanodevices at home and, under a physician's prescription, and, take care of it right there. Like, so you still need physicians, you still need surgeons. Surgeons right now work with, robotic entities like the Da Vinci medical robot.
Boy, what I'm
thinking is, you've heard of that.
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is 1,000,000 times smaller than that.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll still need surgeons to actually orchestrate all these, perhaps millions of nanodevices in somebody's body to affect positive change.
We got about a minute left here. What are there any limits to where humanity can go with the virtue of these kind of technologies?
Well, I'm sure there are indeed limits. I think we should. That's why we should discuss this, to see how far we should actually go, because as you know, humans are very adventurous creatures, and somebody at some point wants to push the boundary just a bit further to see what will happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we should actually, I don't think there really are any limits. A lot of limits we have are placed on ourselves, but I think it comes to a point where we have to think of what's best for humanity, for individuals, and for humanity as a whole.
Well, with that, one of the things I like mostly about yourself is you believe in a natural, inalienable right of optimal health for life.
Right on.
That's
Absolutely.
Terrific. That is terrific. Thank you for joining us, Brother Frank.
Oh, you're so welcome.
And I hope you join us again, whether you're playing your guitar or not.
Right on. Thank you very much, Brother Bob. Brother
All
Michael.
Right.
Brother Dr. Bob.
Thank you. And see you guys next week on 20. Actually, Zoe will see you next week. And that's the show. 21st Century Radio is produced by Hieronymus and Company. Our executive producer and research assistant is Laura Kortner. Our engineer is Anita Brockington, and I'm Dr. Bob Hieronymus.